My Seven Chakras, episode 133.
Fear, uncertainty, and discomfort are your compasses toward growth.
The seven chakras, swirling vortices of energy, positioned throughout our body from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. For thousands of years, this ancient wisdom has been passed on from master to disciple. What are the functions of these energy centers? And could these chakras help you unlock your destiny and find your true purpose? Welcome to My Seven Chakras. And now, your host, Aditya Jai Kumar.
What's up, Action Tribe? AJ here, founder and host of My Seven Chakras, your hub for advice, tips, and ideas that will truly transform your life. This is a show where we prove to you that if you want to make a change in your body, you got to start with your mind. And if you want to change your mind, the easiest way is to start with your body. Because quite honestly, the mind and body are deeply connected. This is not just my gut feeling, although trusting your gut is the best thing you can do. The mind-body connection has been spoken about for thousands of years and is now being validated by science. Action Tribe, we've got a powerful episode in store for you today, but before that, it is question time. As we've learned in countless episodes before this, there's a lot of power in forgiveness. Forgiving someone for something they did in the past allows you to clear away any stagnant energy that's holding you back, and it makes way for white light and love that will help you embrace the new you. So here's what I want you to do right now. We're going to do a forgiveness exercise. Who's that one person that you need to forgive? I repeat, who's that one person that you haven't forgiven yet, but you know deep down that you just need to let go? Type in your response on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram using the hashtag My7Chakras. Just let out that energy into the universe and turn a brand new page today. So do it right now if you can. I'll give you 2 minutes. You can hit pause and we can always jump back into this episode. Have you posted your forgiveness message yet? If you have, then let's get back into action. We are now ready to bring you our featured guest for today, Jenn Hand. So Jenn, are you ready to inspire?
I am.
Awesome. So Jenn Hand is a speaker, writer, author, world traveler, adventure connoisseur, holistic health advocate, creator of Healing from Within, and founder of jennhand.com, a full-service boutique that offers coaching and an 8-week online program that enables women to transform their relationship with food, weight, body, and eating. Jenn Hand helps you end your unending battle with food demons, your daily struggle with cravings, and your constant war with binging. She will hold you by the hand and gently help you lose that extra weight once and for all, never to find it again, ever. So Jenn, before we move on, tell us a bit more about yourself.
So I am a food coach. That's the latest title I've given myself that has changed as my business has grown and evolved. And I work with women who really struggle with emotional eating and obsessing about food and their body and their weight, and get trapped in this cycle of trying to diet and start over every Monday, but by Friday being knee-deep, spooning ice cream into their mouths and trying not to eat pizza and just really battling food and having a really, really tumultuous relationship with it. And so I help these women find that freedom and learn to accept their bodies and learn to love themselves and really find a peaceful relationship with food.
Wonderful. So Jenn, for someone who is just tuning into our show, let's give them a dose of inspiration. So let me ask you, what is your favorite inspirational quote, and tell us how you apply this quote in your life?
I am a huge inspirational quote junkie, so it's hard to pick one, but I would say one of my favorites is fear, uncertainty, and discomfort are your compasses toward growth. And that's by Celestine Chua. And this just speaks to me so much because some of my most challenging situations and obstacles in life have been some of my biggest teachers. And I think a lot of times we shy away from something that's uncomfortable and something we're afraid of, and when we have uncertainty in our lives. And I think those are actually the times where we need to lean in and we need to face it and we need to figure out what's going on, because that's where some of our biggest lessons are. And so for me, it's been reminding myself of that when I'm going through something difficult or facing a difficult emotion or feeling uncertain about a situation in my life. I come back to this quote and remember that, looking back in retrospect, whether that's 6 months, a year, or 5 years, I'll understand how much of a catalyst this was for me towards my own growth and my own change and my own, deepening of myself and my self-love and those big life lessons that often really, really change us at our core.
I think that's an amazing quote. So thanks a lot for sharing that. It hasn't been shared before this. Fear, uncertainty, and discomfort are your compasses towards growth. And when I think of compass, I think of direction. And it's so true. And when we fear something, that's usually a sign that something is holding you back. And that something is usually something that you need to do in order to get to the next level. Something that you need to experience, something that you need to embrace. So as you rightly said, fear, uncertainty, and discomfort are not bad. They're actually your compasses that will point you towards the right direction. So Jennifer, what inspired you to start your website, jennhand.com?
I actually had a very different direction. I enrolled in a master's program in nutrition and was planning to graduate and become a nutritionist and just solely work with food and nutrition. And what I discovered was that my passion actually was different than that. And I had wrestled these demons in my own life and battling my weight and my body and food for probably about 12 or 13 years of my own life. And so it was sort of a natural next step when I found that freedom in my own life. I wanted to sort of combine the nutrition with the emotional piece and the mental blocks and the mindset shifts and all of the other more holistic stuff that helps people heal. Mm-hmm. I wanted to incorporate that into what I did. And so I kind of scrapped being a nutritionist and started my website. And I actually started just blogging. And it was terrifying for me because I was so afraid to let that side of me out into the world because it was such a vulnerable part of me and because it was something I had kept hidden for so many years. I didn't want people to know that I struggled with food. And, close friends and family knew, but the greater part of the world, I didn't want people to know that about me. And so I just started blogging and, just posted on my Facebook. And it kind of grew from there because I got such a really good response from people, just it resonating with people because so many women and men too, struggle with comparing themselves to people they see in the media and wrestling with all the latest and greatest diet trends that they think they have to adhere to lose weight and all of this sort of conflicting information we have out there. It really resonated with people. And so that's kind of where I began. And it sort of just blossomed from there. I mean, I started blogging more and more and ended up starting to take on coaching clients and developed an online program because I wanted to reach more people. And with one-on-one work, I could only do so many a week. And so it kind of began with from a very different direction, but it was, blossomed into something much different than I had envisioned, but something amazing and something I'm really passionate about.
So many great things that you just shared. You mentioned that you were enrolled in a master's program in nutrition, but at a certain point, you discovered something about yourself that you weren't that passionate about that field that you were in. Your passion was different. And I want to take a moment to stop here and sort of internalize what you just shared. Action Tribe, just remember, no matter where you are right now or what path you're on, it's never too late to change if you feel it deep down. And just realizing that you need to change is not enough. As you noticed, Jen started blogging, which is amazing because blogging, podcasting, making videos, it's not easy because it sort of exposes your vulnerability to a new audience, people who can comment and like and share their thoughts based on what you just shared. And, as you did more of those blog articles, it was clear that, you got better at it and you attracted and resonated people who came closer to you. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point about changing our passion, or maybe not our passion, but shifting direction when something doesn't feel right or deep down we know that we need to move in a different direction. Because for me, I did struggle with the nutrition piece because I felt like it was very marketable and so many people wanted a nutritionist and it made so much sense to people. And what I do, a food code, what does that mean? I mean, and I tell people I have a website and they get it once they look around and stuff, but to explain what I do in broader terms, I work with emotions, I work with mindset, I work with mental blocks, I work on body acceptance. And, sometimes it's harder in coaching, sometimes it's harder to grasp than, I'm a nutritionist. And so for me, it was sort of that, what will people think? And this just makes more sense to be a nutritionist. The more rational, logical path doesn't always make the most sense. Our non-logical path that our heart wants might not make as much sense as a logical, rational one. But I think it's like, that inner knowing of just that gut feeling of like, well, this is my path. This is how I want to shift onto that path.
I love that. Now, on your website, you talk about the diet cycle. So what exactly is the diet cycle?
It's actually something I'm very familiar with because I spent so much of my time in it. And it typically goes like this, let's say you're unsatisfied with your body or let's say summer's coming and you're like, I'm going to get in a bathing suit, I'm going to be bearing more skin, and all these kind of thoughts go through your head, and you're like, I'm going to get a beach-ready body, I'm going to slim down for summer, and you're kind of like, all right, starting Monday, I'm going to do paleo, I'm going to do Whole30, I'm going to do some diet, clean eating, cutting out carbs, whatever it is, and it's like, for so many people, the restrictiveness, the limitations it imposes, the pressure we put on ourselves to adhere to a strict eating regimen, it can almost backfire because for me and for so many of the women I work with, it's like on Monday we make these grand promises, okay, I'm going to start over on Monday and this is it. This is the time where I am just going to get it right and I'm not going to fail. I'm going to stick to this diet. And, by Thursday, by Friday, by Wednesday, maybe, that it's just like, someone brings in cookies to work and they're not on our diet plan, but they smell so good. And we're just like, I can't resist them. And so we end up, eating 10 because it's, I'm going to start over tomorrow because I can't have these cookies. And so I'm going to get them all in now, eat as many as I can because tomorrow I'm going to start again. And it sort of is this endless cycle of dieting. You fall off. I call it the bandwagon, falling off the bandwagon. And you get back on, you make these grand promises, and then you end up overeating. And it's kind of that back and forth where, I like to say, when you go on a diet, you eventually have to go on. If you go on something, there has to be an off. And so for so much of our society today, we've just internalize so much about, okay, we have to eat this way. Intellectually, we should be doing this. We got to follow this nutritional advice. And what I teach is really learning how to listen to your body and learning what you need and how to find those answers within instead of just jumping on the latest trend of, this diet's popular, I'm going to start this tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So you spoke about the fact that when a particular season arrives, for example, summer, people jump onto the latest and most popular diet and they get tempted and they quit and then they make a promise again and come back, but they fall back. So there's this cycle of, going back to the diet and then quitting, right? So my question is, based on your experience and based on your study, what are some of the misconceptions that people have when trying to lose weight?
I'd say most people sort of adhere to a one-size-fits-all plan. And so I think the current fads forget that every body is different and different seasons require different eating and different life experiences. You might have more time to cook and have not a high-stress job, and you have tons of time to plan your meals and eat really healthy, whereas someone else might be a mom of 3 and working full-time and she's time to cook, and she's got to make crock-pot meals and just freezer meals and has to be quick and easy. And so it's like life situations can be very different, but also body types. And there's so many factors that go into what works for us, our digestive health, our immune health, our metabolism, our biochemistry, our blood sugar levels. All that stuff sort of factors into how we end up losing weight. And I think people just are like, it's Whole30, I'm going to do it. But does it work for you? Does it work for your body? And, where you are seasonally, or where you can factor in the time of food prep and how much time you have to devote to meal planning. And so I think it's forgetting sort of that our own innate body wisdom. And if you think about it, we're all born knowing when to eat and when we're full and when we get hungry and what portion is good. It's like little kids have such a great, are such a great example of this because it's like they have that guidance system internally. They don't question it. They're done their meal. They want to go play. They have more important things to do. And so it's like we sort of lose touch with that. And what I teach is getting back to that place within us where we trust that guidance. And that's sort of where the lasting change comes from, because when we learn to listen to our own selves and what we need and what we want and when we're full and when we're hungry and what foods energize us and what foods make us feel sluggish, it's like that's where the lasting change comes, because we're not using our mind. We're not using the intellect to create some rule or some food regimen that we have to adhere to. It becomes a deeper sort of body wisdom sense that we know, oh, this food makes me feel better and this food doesn't. It's not an answer from our head. It's not like a rule, oh, you can't eat that cookie. It sort of comes from a different place of, oh, well, how does that cookie make me feel? And so I think with weight loss, it's sort of, that was sort of a long-winded answer, but I would say sort of on a more practical level, a lot of people think that eating fewer calories is the way to lose weight. And remembering that our bodies need fuel. And a lot of times, just from a biochemical standpoint, our bodies, when we cut back calories and we eat, we go into that sort of starvation mode in our body, and our body holds on to everything that we're eating because it's in starvation mode. It's in like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's coming. Is it a famine? And our body kind of sends that emergency signal off, so we actually hold on to the weight even more. And so I think that's sort of a common misnomer when trying to lose weight. It's like, oh, we got to cut it to 1,000 calories, or calorie-wise, we kind of go into that whole world. And in fact, it's sort of because we want that quick fix. We want we want it to happen by next week, instead of taking that big picture view of, oh, well, how do we get back in touch with ourselves? So we don't have to count calories. We don't have to track every single thing that we're eating and putting into our mouths.
So it's all about, I guess, tapping into our internal guidance system instead of adhering to a diet that somebody else created that is supposed to work for everyone.
Yes. And that's sort of, in the most simple terms, yes. But, with that comes a lot of, emotions tie into the food, and people eat when they're bored, eat when they're anxious, or eat when they're, feeling something. And so it's like essentially relearning how to listen to ourselves, whether that's emotionally in what we need, whether that's physically in what we need. But it's, our relationship with food reflects out into so many other things in our life. And so it's like finding that sense of trusting ourselves and trusting our own guidance, that we know what to eat. And when we get rid of all those rules in our head about we have to eat this kale smoothie, or we have to eat this salad, or we have to eat this because we're going to lose weight, it sort of opens up a whole new world of, oh, well, what do I want to eat? What feels good to eat? What's nourishing to my body? And that kind of thing.
Now, I know that your program, Healing from Within, is 8 weeks long. Could you walk us through what exactly happens each week?
Yeah, so I actually designed the program to address the 8 big themes that run through what so many people struggle with around food and body and eating. Sure. And so the first week we do address rebalancing the biochemistry. So this week is really jumping into the food piece. And because food is a component, it is emotionally, it is mental, it is all these other things, but we're going to be eating, 3, 4, 5 times a day forever. So we have to address that piece of it. And so I teach a way of eating that sort of essentially rebalances us from a biochemical perspective. Because a lot of times when we're in that diet and overeating cycle for so long, our body's just kind of all over the place metabolically, digestive-wise, and our blood sugar. And so I kind of teach, okay, let's stabilize ourselves first, so that opens up a path into a more intuitive way of eating. And so the second week we go into letting go of the diet mentality and really addressing beliefs and looking at the diets we've gone on and understanding that dieting only leads you to, failure is sort of built into the cycle, and saying, when you go on a diet, you have to go off a diet. And we go into an approach I call eating to satisfy. So when satisfaction and nourishment become an integral part of the way we eat, it's sustainable for the long term. It's not a 30-day fix. It's not a 21-day cleanse. It's like we've got to learn how to satisfy ourselves so we can sustain this way of eating long term. So the third week we dive into mindful eating, which I'm really big on, because when we slow down, when we pay attention, when we actually are present for what we're eating, a lot of our unhealthy habits tend to fall away naturally. So teaching tips and strategies to really start to slow down and cultivate that sense of mindfulness and awareness and how that relates to food and eating. And the fourth week, we talk about hunger and fullness and really learning the art of listening to the body, because it is often a forgotten art, because many women have spent so much time battling themselves and mistrusting their bodies, and to build that bridge from, okay, here's me having ignored my body for so many years, and how do I get to that place where I'm listening and I'm learning and I'm letting the answers come up and beginning to trust. We also go into, in the fifth week, emotions, which is such a big component of addressing all the stuff beneath it. And I think a lot of times that's where diets fail, is that it's very surface level. And so we've got to address why we're eating in the first place and what role food plays in our lives and what need it fulfills so that we can get those needs met elsewhere and learn to deal with emotions and process the difficult things we're dealing with in life. The 6th week goes into perfectionism. And this is sort of a big theme that comes up again and again, thinking we need to be a certain weight or a certain size to feel acceptable, to feel enough. And so sort of this touches a little bit on accepting ourselves where we are and learning to soften that pressure we put on ourselves to be perfect and to whittle ourselves down to this certain size so we can gain acceptability. And then the 7th week is all about self-care and nourishment. So really learning how to take care of ourselves, because a lot of times we use food as a substitute for pleasure in our lives or to fulfill needs we're not quite sure how to get met. And so we kind of learn how to take care of ourselves and how to nourish ourselves from a deeper level than just eating and just food. And then the last week is sort of, one that could probably be taken into like 6 more weeks, but it's about finding your connection to spirit, to your soul, to, whatever phrase you want to put on it, because so much of disordered eating is eating to fill an emptiness, eating to fill something you feel that we don't have inside of us. And so, trying to establish some connection to something bigger than us so it can find that connection and not use food to fill this emptiness inside of us.
Wonderful. So thanks a lot for your response. I loved your response. Love the range of topics that you speak about in the course. And more importantly, the progression of the topics is really amazing. You start with rebalancing the body's biochemistry. You move into letting go of the diet mentality, creating that mind shift. You move into mindful eating, hunger and fullness, listening to the body, moving on to emotions, perfectionism, because a lot of people have a difficulty accepting themselves. So you focus on that and then move on to self-care and nourishment. And finally, once you've completed the 1st through 7, you move on to finding your connection with your higher self or spirit or whatever name you give it, but just finding your connection so that you don't have to fill that emptiness with food because you have that connection. Now, thanks a lot for that answer. Now, something that also caught my attention was a meditation product that you offer called Fall in Love with Your Body meditation. Is that correct?
Yes.
How does this work?
I've found that meditation can be an amazing tool for beginning the path and deepening the path down to body acceptance, because so often, in my journey, especially, and so many of the women I've worked with, it's like we accept our bodies and like we got it, and then something pulls us off center. Something, we see someone who lost weight, someone triggers us. We see an advertisement telling us, okay, lose weight and this is how you do it, and featuring, models and stick thin women and all this kind of stuff. And it's sort of like constantly in today's society, I think it can be challenging to find that body acceptance, but also maintain it, because there's so much external stimulation in social media and Instagram and pictures and like everything. It's just we're surrounded by ideals of bodies that we think we should be at. And so I found meditation to be a really helpful tool. Some people don't latch onto it right away. Some people really resist meditation. I resisted meditation for many years. I was like, no, I don't have time for meditation, which is like the whole point is that when you don't have time, you need to meditate. But I created a 12-minute meditation to just sort of kickstart that connection to something that goes beyond ourselves. Because I think with body acceptance, if affirmations can work and positive thinking can work, but at the end of the day, I think what really drives it home is closing our eyes and being able to feel that we're bigger than our body, that we're not just our physical self and what we see. And so I use the meditation to sort of guide the listener there to begin to connect with that and begin to feel that sense of internal peace and center, so that, going there again and again and again can be like the anchor. So when they get thrown off center, or when they feel bad about their body, or they're finding themselves comparing to someone else, it's like coming back to that place and being familiar enough with it that you feel when you get thrown off, but I know how to get back there.
Wonderful. So it seems like you're not just teaching people the mind, the mental aspect, the physical aspect of what to eat, what not to eat, creating that relationship and the love for that person, but also helping them get back on track once in a while when they get off track, and helping them create that sacred sanctuary, so to speak, so that they're safe even after the program ends, so to speak.
Yeah, and it is, I will say it's a journey. And for me, it definitely has been a journey. But I think the point being that you have the tools and you know what to come back to and you know what to help. And it's like strengthening a muscle. You might not get it forever, but you still know how to strengthen that muscle so that becomes stronger and stronger. And that becomes the default instead of defaulting back into old patterns.
Awesome. So Jenn, thank you so much for sharing your tips and your insights. As we speak, I can imagine so many action takers having this one question on their mind. How do I start building a strong and healthy relationship with food? So is there a health tip that you'd like to share with our listeners that they could try, right after this episode?
I'd say looking at in your life where you have food rules. And what I mean by that is we all have these rules in our head about I can't eat after 7. I can't eat carbs. I can't eat bread Monday through Friday. I can't eat sweets at work. Whatever rules we have for ourselves, like the good food, bad foods type of thing. Just sort of making a list, like doing a brain dump of like, here are all my rules. I think once you kind of start looking at, okay, well, where am I making these rules for myself and where am I imposing limitations and where do I automatically have, oh, this is good or this is bad? And just kind of writing them out and then starting to see, because the awareness of just doing that starts to soften the rules, because you start to see where they have their hold over you. And for me, for so long, it was, not eating after 7, not eating sweets Monday through Friday. And when I started to recognize them for what they were, it allowed me to be able to have a sweet on a Wednesday and have it be okay. Because I started to examine the rules and be like, well, who made this rule? Why am I listening to this rule? And, who said that this is actually true? And so it's like when we can ask those questions about what we're blindly following, it starts to break it apart so that they don't become how, our lives dominated by these rules and these things we follow. And so that can be really, really helpful. So that's sort of a more, I would say holistic type tip for people who are desperately in that cycle and can't get out. On a more practical level, I think making sure you're eating about every 3 to 4 hours. And so it's different for many people. It can be, it could be 4.5 hours. It could be, 3 hours. But the point is that when our blood sugar gets so low, and so that typically happens, 4.5 into that 5th hour between times that we've eaten, we start to get those physical cravings, and we're at that place where our blood sugar is at the bottom, and we want anything, sugar, a quick digesting carb, caffeine, to kind of pick our energy up and to get our blood sugar back up to its norm. And so I think just remembering that, a lot of people struggle with cravings and not being able to resist the candy dish at work, but a lot of times it has to do with just something as simple as eating every 3 to 4 hours. And if that sort of time frame doesn't work for you, looking at eating more regularly and often so you keep your blood sugar at that stable level, so you don't have to get into the cravings and the physical pull of, oh my gosh, I need food, I need sugar, I need something to give me that energy.
Action Tribe, to access the show notes for today's episode, visit my7chakras.com/133. That's my7chakras.com/133. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. This is a brilliant quote by Greek philosopher Epictetus. One of the biggest strengths of mankind, Action Tribe, is the ability to think, imagine, and communicate. However, this strength can also be a huge challenge because we tend to imagine negative consequences, which leads to worry, which leads to stress, and ultimately to disease and bad health. Your objective is to stop, recognize those patterns, recognize those rules, as Jenn shared, and replace those worries with positive thoughts and constructive action taking. If something is within your control, then get support, learn, read, take a course, and take action. However, as Epictetus said over 2,000 years back, you need to cease worrying about things that are beyond your control. So Jenn, take us back to a time when you faced a major obstacle, whether it's financial, health, relationships, or something else. Talk to us about how you came across the challenge, and then how did you deal with it finally?
I would say one of my biggest challenges was when being caught in this cycle of disordered eating, and when I finally got to the size that I had wanted to be for so long. And I remember standing in the mirror and being at the smallest I ever was. I'd lost tons of weight and I could, fit into dresses and small jean sizes and all of these things. And I remember looking in the mirror and still thinking that I wasn't acceptable, that I wasn't enough. And it was such a defining moment for me because it was like I had gotten everything I thought I wanted. I had achieved the weight loss. I had gotten to exactly where for so long I had said, well, once I get here, then I'll be happy. Then I'll accept my body. Then I'll feel comfortable in myself. And it was like this just light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, I'm at that place right now and I don't feel happy, I don't feel comfortable, and I don't feel accepted. And it sort of sparked my own spiritual journey of, well, how do I find happiness and how do I feel acceptable and feel comfortable and be happy internally? And I think for me, it was that feeling of hopelessness and like, but I had gotten everything that I thought I wanted and I should be happy right now. And instead I don't feel happy. I just feel desperate. Like I'm wondering how I'm going to stay at this weight. I felt like a failure because I still didn't like my body. And I sort of felt like, well, what was the point of all this? What was the point of dieting and trying to be thin and, having this sort of control my mind, because it was sort of this like, oh, well, I still don't love myself. And for me, it just sort of was a big catalyst for, okay, well, let's have a different focus here. Let's not focus on the weight loss and the dieting and controlling my food, but let's focus on how can I be happy and how can I find happiness within myself and within my life and live in the moment and not just be living for some point in the future that I think is going to make me happy again.
Wonderful. Now, in just one sentence, what is it one major life lesson that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, one sentence. So I'd say that happiness is never in the future. It's always in the here and now.
Love that. So firstly, thanks a lot for sharing this story with us. This phase of the show is usually the most powerful. I love this phase because it allows me to, sort of understand your experience of going through a challenge and what you learned as a result of it. Because as they say that the biggest life lessons is what the universe teaches us before warning us, right? So it's always before warning. And let me just restate some of the things that you shared for the benefit of our listeners. You shared that the biggest challenge that you had was at that point, disordered eating. And then you took the action, you lost weight, you stood in front of the mirror. And even then, logically, you should have felt happy, but then you felt like there was something missing. You didn't feel accepted. You felt like you weren't enough. And that sort of hit you because it led you to wondering, if this is not making me happy, then how do I find that happiness? And that sort of took you on a quest to find happiness, not in the future, but find ways to find happiness right now. So I think a lot of our listeners will be highly inspired by your story, and it sort of reflects in your course as well, because in your course you just don't teach people how to lose weight, but you focus on so many other aspects of weight loss. First of all, eating right, your connection with yourself, your connection to spirit, and also integrating that with wonderful meditation so that the person can always come back to track and find that sacred space wherever he or she is. So I love your focus and thanks a lot for sharing.
Sure.
And Action Tribe, social media and the internet are bringing us closer than ever. Never before in the history of mankind did we have within our reach software that allows us to have crystal clear conversations with people around the world. I'm living proof. I live in Vancouver, Canada, up north, and I recently interviewed a guest all the way down south in Australia. A few weeks back, I interviewed someone living in Ecuador in South America. Isn't that amazing? As we speak, there are people who are trying to use technology to cure cancer, to provide education, to help conscious businesses grow. However, with the power of the internet, hate and intolerance can also spread, as you might have noticed. People who judge others based on your religion, color, race, gender, or country of origin, and are always saying things to instigate. In such a moment, remember the powerful words of Thomas Paine, who said, "My country is the world, and my religion is to do good." So Jen, what is your life's calling as on today?
I'm actually doing my life's calling, and my passion and sort of my vision is to help millions of women find peace in their bodies and peace in their eating, because I think it's, when I first started my business, I didn't have a clue how many people struggled with this. And I get messages and emails and, posts all the time from women just saying like, oh my gosh, I thought it was crazy. I thought I was just crazy thinking all of these things and dealing with all of this stuff on my own. And it's like, I'm so surprised by kind of, what you're saying, working with people from all over the world and interviewing people from all over the world, like, it's not just, I live in the States, it's not just people in America, it's people everywhere, all over the world who struggle with this. And it's a symptom of something so much deeper, and to help contribute to, people's happiness and to live the life that they are meant to live, and not to be hiding in this shell of, of a life where they feel hopeless and like a failure, and like they're just caught in this cycle of trying to lose weight, forever. And I think that was sort of a defining moment for me, when I had that moment in the mirror of just like, oh my gosh, am I going to be in this cycle for the next 20 years, for the next 50 years? I don't want to spend my life, and look back 50 years from now and say, oh, I just spent the entire part of my 50 years obsessing over how I was fat, or how I wasn't thin enough, or what diet I could go on. And I didn't want that to be my legacy. And it was sort of that catalyst for me to shift into my own healing, and now, helping to heal others as well.
So Jenn, be prepared for the onslaught of emails and calls that you'll be receiving from Action Tribe who want to know how do they change their relationship with food. Now, as you relive your memories, was there ever a moment in your life, maybe a magic moment, beyond which you were confident that your life was about to change? Take us to that very moment.
I would have to say, actually, not having anything to do with food or weight or body. My undergrad degree was in advertising. And when I finished my degree, I had done a study abroad program called Semester at Sea. And, it just kind of got the travel bug, because I'd experienced so many different countries and got to travel all over the world. And when I graduated college, I knew I didn't want to be in advertising, and I didn't want to work at an ad agency. And it was like, I just remember, and, it wasn't some earth-shattering moment, but I just remember, for me, sitting on my bed in my dorm room, having just finished all my classes and, being done college, and knowing that I was going to spend my next year traveling and living in another country, and just sort of not following this path that I had been set out on. And it was like this exhilarating and terrifying moment at the same time, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is my passion. I want to travel. I want to experience different cultures. I want to live in another country. And at the same time, terrifying of, well, my parents think, what will other people think? I just got this degree and I'm just going to, quote unquote, waste it. And I'm not going to follow and pursue a career in advertising. And so it was like this magic moment of equal parts fear and equal parts exhilaration. And I think the exhilaration was greater than the fear. And that's how I knew it was like, yes, like, this is a defining moment of, I'm going to listen to my heart, and I'm going to listen to myself, and not let some expectation or someone's idea of what I should do with my life or my career define me.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing that wonderful moment with Action Tribe. And that brings us to the final round for today's show, the Wisdom Round, which basically is 4 questions, rapid fire round style. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So Jenn, what is the best advice that someone's ever given you?
It's sort of a quote, and it's, the heart has reasons that reason cannot know. And meaning our heart knows the way, and it might not make sense. It might not be logical. It might be like, oh my gosh, is that really the right thing for me? But I've found over and over again in my life that my heart knows, and that intuitive gut feeling that you just know, like, this is right, this is my path, has given me so much direction in my own life.
So what is that one personal habit that keeps you strong?
Hands down, it would be journaling. And so I try and journal every day, just about, emotional, because for me, it was, I had spent so long stuffing down my emotions, and it's a way for me to heal and to release and to process things that are going on in my own life.
Love that. So what is your morning ritual like? What do you do during the first 2 hours of your day?
A lot of times it involves some sort of exercise. So whether that's a walk or yoga or, run or something, I try and move my body. Meditation. So I try and do 10 to 15 minutes every morning, and starting off with something inspirational. So whether that's a video or a little passage in an inspirational book or a quote or a meditation, a song or something like that, but some piece of material that inspires me and uplifts me and kind of kickstarts my day. I wouldn't say I do that every single day, but more often than not, I try and do all 3 of those things. I would say sometimes it's like, oh, I'm just going to press snooze, I'm so tired. But, more often than not, I love to start my day with those 3 things.
So name a book that you'd like to recommend for our listeners today.
A book that has been life-changing for me is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and it introduced me to, that was kind of my first spiritual self-help inspirational book, and it's incredible to just realize that we have the power of being in the now as how we can be happy and how we can find peace and joy in the moment.
So Action Tribe, to access today's show notes, visit my7chakras.com/133. That's my7chakras.com/133. And this is a good time, Action Tribe, to think about what is that one thought that's going on in your mind right now. And if you're thinking about the future, come back to the here and now. So Jenn, thank you so much for coming on our show today. Before you go, tell us one thing that you are really, really grateful for, and tell us how we can find you.
I'm really grateful for my new nephew who, as I said in the beginning, his name matches yours, which is AJ. He's a week old. So it's been really, really special in my life. And you can find me at www.jennhand.com, JENNHAND.com.
So we'll definitely have this link up in the show notes. Action Tribe, if you want a way to change your relationship with food by just not focusing on a diet and then losing weight and gaining it back again, but changing the way you look at health in general. Because as we spoke about in the start, your mind and body are connected, and Jenn definitely knows through experience that you need a holistic approach to changing your lifestyle, changing your habits, changing your patterns, and not just having that change or making that change, but staying there and embracing the real you. If you need to learn more, go to jennhand.com, JENNHAND.com. We'll have the link in the show note as well. So Jenn, thank you so much for coming on our show, talking to us about our relationship with food and taking us one massive leap closer to a human revolution.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
You were listening to My 7 Chakras. Go to mysevenchakras.com. Download your free gift, get inspired, and take action. Transform your life today.